There's a Roman fort buried beneath Walton-le-Dale at the location where the River Darwen meets the River Ribble. That's probably where the name Walton-le-Dale comes from, wall being Saxon for any long-forgotten earthwork and dale being, well, a dale. We couldn't be bothered looking for it, like the hunchbacked baby-murdering Richard III was until recently. It's currently lost beneath a car park. We probably ought to mention the Curedale Hoard around this point, found on the banks of the River Ribble in 1840. The largest hoard of Viking treasure ever discovered, totalling over 8,500 pieces. But we've quite a lot to cover, so we'll move on. Spool forward chronologically, and during the Civil War there was lots of scrapping going on around these parts, especially in 1644 between Oliver Cromwell and the Duke of Hamilton. They didn't get on very well. Cromwell was said to have conducted the aforementioned scrap from Pinocchio's restaurant. It wasn't Pinocchio's back then, of course. His ghost reputedly still haunts the building, probably waiting for the bill. Cromwell's Barney with the Duke of Hamilton, who sounds like a 1970s DJ to us, was known historically as the First Battle of Preston. It was followed up in 1715 by the appropriately named Second Battle of Preston, when Parson Wood and his parishioners, true to the spirit of aggro-loving Lancashire vicars, kicked 7 buckets of the proverbial out of the Jacobites. But it's St Leonards, a Norman church that's had a few major structural alterations over the centuries, that we're interested in right now. In particular, what took place there on August the 12th, 1560, a case of necromancy most diabolic. The story goes that Dr. John Dee, a scholar of the occult, minister at Manchester, and astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I, so all in all, somebody who ought to have known better really, along with David Kelly, a psychic fraudster who knew they existed, and Paul Waring, just a nosy Parker, entered the graveyard at midnight on the aforementioned date and set about summoning a dead man. The dead man was possibly Thomas Langton, the Lord Mayor of Manchester, although history doesn't furnish us with the details. Said corpse allegedly knew the whereabouts of a stash of buried treasure, which he promptly revealed to the 3 necromancers, not having much use for it himself, what with him now being dead and all. However, along with the whereabouts of the money, the ghost also revealed the fortunes of various villagers, none of which turned out to be quite as prosperous. There's probably the plot of a Japanese horror film hidden in that lot somewhere. As an aside, Edward Kelly, the 16th century's answer to Derek Cora, was said to have no ears, having had them removed as punishment for some previous criminal activity at Lancaster Castle. Just thought I'd throw that in. Just up the road from Walton-le-Dale is Bamber Bridge, an otherwise insignificant suburb of Preston, if it wasn't for the Battle of Bamber Bridge, that, despite sounding all Civil War again, actually took place between some American forces and some more American forces during World War II. It happened like this. During the war, the US Armed Forces were still racially segregated. Not that the landlords of Bamber Bridge held much chuck with that philosophy. After they were ordered to keep the soldiers apart, the landlords, who weren't going to be bossed around by a bunch of racist Yanks, just placed boards outside their pubs reading "Black Soldiers Only." As a result, on June the 24th, 1943, black soldiers from the 1511th Quartermaster Truck Regiment were cheerfully drinking with the locals at the Ye Olde Hob Inn, an interesting name in its own right, but that's for another time perhaps, when a group of American MPs arrived to arrest them. One thing led to another, and before long a pitched battle was underway. 1 man dead, 7 people shot, 2 MPs badly beaten up, and quite a lot of pints spilled during the argument. Fortunately, no such divisions exist within American society today. What? What are you looking at me like that for? At least us Lancastrians got it right for once. While we're in this neck of the woods, we might as well take a gander at Horton Tower. Horton Tower is a fortified manor house with some tenuous connections to William Shakespeare, standing on a hilltop. It's been around since the 12th century, although the present building dates from circa 1560. King James Mark I stayed here in 1617, sportingly slaughtering the local wildlife as was his wont, alongside the Bishop of Chester and numerous earls, baronets and other aristocratic hangers-on, all intent on living it large. Understandably perhaps, the resident Puritans soon got a bit sick of all the noise. They disrupted the church services, dressed somewhat bizarrely as household gods by way of complaint. King James, however, was having none of it. In a huff, he commissioned the Bishop of Chester to start work on the Book of Sports, a legal document that lifted the restrictions on Sunday leisure activities. This in turn led to the Puritans taking umbrage and buggering off to America, before returning several centuries later with their puritanical views on race segregation and starting the riot at Bamber Bridge. Eventually, Dickie Davis was created for sports enthusiasts and weekends were never the same again. While he was at Horton Tower, King James, or so the legend goes, was so impressed by the quality of his steak, not to mention the beer, of which no doubt he'd consumed copious amounts, that he knighted his loin of beef. That's how sirloin steak came to be named. The story's apocryphal, of course, but the truth should never stand in the way of an entertaining yarn. Charles Dickens visited Horton Tower in 1867. He wasn't impressed, finding the building in a depressing state of disrepair. It did, however, inspire him to write the short story George Silverman's Explanation the following year. No, we've never heard of it either. There's a Tudor well at Horton Tower and at least 3 priest holes. However, I don't know about you, but I've had enough of the place now, so it's time to wrap this episode up. Click like, subscribe, etc., and after a pint or two and a chip of barm cake, we'll have a sit down and see what we can come up with for the next episode.